Good morning and many thanks for joining us on today's edition of Off the Press, where we discuss newspaper headlines. Now we have a couple of newspapers here from The Punch to This Day, The Nation and much more. And to discuss all of the headlines right here, we have with us Dayo Lomuwagun. Good morning and very much thank you for staying with us. And we also have Nejeeb Bello as well, a public affairs analyst. It's also good to have your face here one more time.
Thank you for having me.
Let's kickstart conversation right now with headlines from The Punch. Now, starting with The Punch newspaper, we have the biggest headline, APC's Ganduje Lalong win. PDP's Tambua Otom re-elected Hussaini Jime Aliyu Yusuf Kek vow to challenge results. And we see the graphs here. We see Aliyu and then Tambua with quite a slim margin as well. And that also follows through with Ganduje Yusuf, Otom as well, and Lalong. And 13 billion naira Ikoyi cash, EFCC declares ex-NIADG Oke and wife wanted. Fire destroys over 20 houses, many shops in Lagos. And Makinde vows to review Ajimobi's last-minute contract. FG spent 1.8 trillion naira on joint venture assets in 2018, and that's according to the NNPC. Police arrest 77 for court clashes, killing in Ajah, and Plateau women demands justice for siblings molested by neighbor. And foreign investors withdrew 55 billion naira from stock market in February, and that's according to the Nigeria Stock Exchange. Now, gentlemen, let's start with the supplementary elections that were held. That is so far the biggest story that we've had over this weekend. Now, looking at Ganduje's win as well as Lalong, and we also look at Tambua and Otom, what do you make of these wins, considering the margins especially? And we know the instances of violence and a whole lot more still played out once again. So how then do we say these are a true reflection of the votes that people cast?
Well, from when the supplementary elections were announced, I expected the incumbent governors, the incumbent candidates to win, because there was already conflict with the margin and those results that could not be counted or were not counted or exempted. So I felt that perhaps with the advantage they had as governors, they could maybe influence a thing or two or have a better chance to rally their supporters. So as expected, except for Bauchi, which has not officially been announced,
exactly,
I expected the sitting governors to win. But then Tambuwal surprised me, of course. Tambuwal was someone that after he left the APC and when contest tried to win the PDP presidential ticket, I felt he had given up on the governor's seat. And I felt coming back, he would... I thought they would see him as a loser and just drop him. But then he has surprised me even with the slimmest margin I've heard in these elections. And
Dayo as well, we see these margins, they are pretty much slim. The figures are not so large this time around once again. But now you see Yusuf Aliyu saying they are going to kick against these election results so far. Do you think we're just going back and forth in circles and everybody should just acknowledge that, well, INEC has conducted it and everybody go to rest? Contest when it comes 4 years time again.
You see, I think that is the unfortunate part of our electoral process. Currently, people have their right to seek redress in the court if they think their rights have been violated, or, I mean, if you think you have won the election or something, and you have a right to go to the court. If you think the election was not free and fair, and if you think there are, I mean, all kinds of things that is not lawful, they are not constitutional, I mean, you have a right to definitely seek redress in the court.
But don't you think this is all sheer politicking? When you lose, we are very sour losers.
No. So I think in fairness to the people that decide to go to court, they have a right to go to court, and that's why we have a court system. Because if I think if I'm not comfortable with the process, so I think that this is a question for what electoral process we have, because this is how it works. You go to for election, there are malpractices. I mean, where you even have electoral offender. The question is how many people were arrested, how many people were prosecuted.
We saw issues of vote buying, we saw violence break out.
So you can see all that, and you want to go to court. Clearly, so until we get the process right, such that when you lose, you know you lost fairly. Okay. That you don't want to.
Now let's shift focus now to the 13 billion naira Ikoyi cash. EFCC declares ex-NIA DG that Oke and his wife Olashade wanted. Now they failed to appear for trial. What do you make of this situation now? We always give excuses when individuals are expected to show up for trial and they don't come through. Do you think it's some level of disrespect that is ordinarily expected?
You know, the case of, I just learned that it's because they didn't show up in court. I thought maybe they just declared them wanted because they could, I feel if there is a need to arrest them, they should arrest them. It's when you cannot find the person, you can't go to their address and arrest them. That's when, or invite them in, that may be when you declare them wanted. Well, as long as they are still around and you know where they are, I think it's just simply.
Well, we know where they are. According to reports now, Dayo, quickly, Oke and his wife are said to have traveled out of the country for medical treatments. Now, when it's time for prosecution, it's time for trial, we always hear them taken ill. What do you make of this situation where we see this, I have a toothache, or I have high blood pressure, or I can't walk, I can't eat right, or I'm just going for medical treatment?
I think it's a whole lot of it's a whole lot of issues. You see, the defender will always want to, especially if you know the way things are going, you're likely going to be the verdict will likely be that you are guilty. Now, the defender will have a way of. I mean, you look at the loopholes in the law, and to the extent that we don't punish iniquity in our country, to the extent that you see, when you don't punish iniquity, the heart of people they're bent to do what is not right. So, in the past, what has happened? So,
but these are money laundering charges amounting to 13 billion naira, which cannot just be swept under the carpet. So even if they traveled earlier on in January, there's no how that there's no means of communication between them and their legal
I would
team.
like to add that when EFCC had taken this case up, and with the amount in question, they would have withdrawn their passports or some other thing. And even
but they traveled before being arrested.
There was a point where they tried to arrest them earlier, I think 2017, and there was a clash between DSS officials and EFCC officials. So we don't really, there may be something that is preventing them from taking the right action when it comes to, okay, as an ex
maybe it's just
DG.
the Nigerian factor.
No. As an ex-DG of the NIA, there are there's special protection for them. So that's why I think they can't just go and seize his passport, or they can't just go and raid his house, because they tried to raid his house in 2017 and there was virtually a small fracas between his DSS security.
So once again we see the untouchable play out.
There seems to be some element of that here.
Talking about elements now, Makinde, that's the governor-elect, now vows to review Ajimobi's last-minute contracts. Now, his allegation here is that totaling to about 30 billion naira, new contracts have been awarded, which he finds suspicious by the governor who is leaving. So he expects that, well, if you're leaving office, there's no need for any hasty conclusions or signing of contracts or awarding. What do you think of that, Dayo?
I think, yeah, maybe he's right. You got to review those kind of contracts. You see, if you spend 4 years or more in government and you have not done whatever you want to, just a few weeks to go, or a few days to go, and you're given to the tune of 30-something billion, that's a lot of money. So in fairness to Makinde, I think those are the area where you want to look into, where you can, I mean, you assume power. But I also think you don't necessarily have to be announcing that now. So the news already in the public domain. He's spending so much billion on contract, even when everybody knows he's out of the office already, almost out of the office already. So I would have suspected him where he assumes office to just go straight into that. I mean, maybe that everybody will become public, but to be drumming it now in the public space, maybe just.
Do you think crying foul at this point in time really serves to the interest of the people of Oyo State?
I don't see the necessity for making these pronouncements now. He's going to be governor soon. No one will stop him from investigating or probing. We've heard the same thing in Imo State. They say Okorocha is maybe borrowing loans, taking loans from banks and maybe other. So these are pronouncements I think politicians make just before they enter office, especially when they are there's a handover between an opposition party. You don't hear these things. When Aregbesola was handing over to his deputy, you didn't hear things like, I'll investigate. So it's when opposing parties are taking over that you hear these things. But it's not necessary. Let them just have a cordial handover. Then he can do whatever he wants to do when he becomes governor. But let there be a cordial handover.
Okay, and now we shift focus to this day newspaper. The biggest headline once again, INEC declares the long autumn. Tambuwal Ganduje re-elected. Mohammed wins extra election in Bauchi. PDP kicks over Kano. And APC will enforce party's decision on National Assembly leadership. Lawan vows to obey party's resolution and explains ambition. Discos tell Buhari to sit up over power supply, says companies no longer responsible for meters give conditions for stability in electricity supply. And Falana is saying, well, assigning all blocks to IOCs, individuals, is unconstitutional. And we also have the picture here of Aisha Buhari at the Tony Elumelu Foundation, the event where she says that, well, the cabinet should have more women in President Buhari's function this time around to ensure that he delivers on his mandate. But let's also look at the fact that we know the composition of the 9th Assembly, how critical it is. And do you think the APC is saying that, well, they will enforce the party's decision on the National Assembly? Yes, they have the majority, but how do you think this would also play out this time around?
This whole party decision started in the...
This is the 9th Assembly we're talking about. Yeah, we must see some level of improvement.
Yes,
from the
it caused some friction within the APC in the 8th Assembly, which led up to some people eventually leaving the party. All them, Saraki and the rest of them, you know, there was an arrangement of who the party wanted as Senate President, as leader of the House of Reps. But then I hope this time around, it's easy for them to agree on what they want to do. And we move forward with it. I don't want to see that friction between National Assembly and presidency because of differences in, you know, let's have a smooth sail this time around. Let them do what they feel is best. And I hope they choose people based on pedigree and, you know, merit rather than who is really the best party man.
Okay. And Dayo, he says, Lawan says, well, his decision to lead the Senate is predicated on the fact that he wants a National Assembly that will be able to serve Nigerians and bring some level of good change to Nigerians, positive change for good. And he says, well, they are not going to be given an opportunity for the minority, that's the PDP, to interfere in who emerges.
So I think like some other senators in the Hollow Chamber, Lawan has a right. I mean, he has a right to ask for this. He's also qualified. He has experience and all that. But like he mentioned, this cost not only the APC so much in the 8th Assembly. It cost the whole of Nigeria. You know, you see fight everywhere. The policies of government cannot be pushed through. You know, so you don't want that to happen again. So I think APC should just call all these people, call them to order. People should, to the extent that you're actually looking for the best among the best, you also have a party. And so you don't want what happened in the 8th Assembly, where it was practically the opposition that was in charge of the National Assembly, of the Senate and all that. You don't want that. So, I agree that there should be separation of powers here and there, but also, to an extent, you need a fusion of power where the National Assembly is able to talk to the executive and things are able to push forward. But to go back and explain what we explained in the 8th Assembly,
and these are all individuals that are expected to represent constituencies, so it should be ideologies that are supposed to bring change, not necessarily who leads. We should have conversations that lead. We see what happens in climes like Britain and a whole lot more. Conversations that yield development are being held there.
Exactly. In our own system, in our own Senate, we found out that the leadership of the Senate does matter a lot in bringing these ideologies to fore. From when Ken Nnamani was Senate President and also jumping over David Mark. During the period of David Mark, the kind of ideas, the kind of arguments we saw and the kind of bills that were passed, it was just a Senate that I didn't I didn't connect with a lot. But during Saraki's period, I saw some improvements. So I do believe that whoever becomes the Senate president, there's a way he leads the kind of ideologies, the kind of ideas, and the kind of bills that will be passed. Because there's a lot of lobbying that goes behind the scenes. It's not just those arguments you see on the floor.
Okay.
There's a lot of lobbying. They call people together and say, okay, let's do this like that. So I think it matters a lot at the end of the day.
Okay, and this goes also tell President Buhari to set up a power supply, and they say no longer are they responsible for meters. Instead, we have the newly initiated Meters Asset Provider Program, which is of the NERC, which is now saddled with that task. But they say this time around, President Buhari has to look at the power sector, not playing politics this time around, but taking decisive steps to ensure that we have this sector thrive. Do you think we are just talking here, or instead we should have real-time, feasible plans of action with the Minister of Power Works and Housing to say XYZ is how we intend to address these issues? Our meters here are very much important. We are tired of estimated billings.
You see, I've paid for meter in the last 1 year and I've not gotten anything. You see, Nigerians are tired of the stories they're talking about. Whether it's this body creating that body, we are less concerned.
We just want to see action.
Yeah, in 2014, we have Fashola said, oh, if you can't provide electricity in 6 months, it's not rocket science, it's not this. I mean, this is 4 years gone. We're entering under. So this story, we are not interested as Nigerians. Whatever the issue, the president, the Minister of Power, and everybody involved in this, what we need is Nigerians need light, and they want to be big fairly.
Okay. Now, moving on to the Nation newspaper, we have also again Autumn Lalong Ganduje Tambuwal win elections and Yusuf Hussaini vow to launch legal battles. We see the graph here as well showing the margins of lead across the different states where we had the supplementary elections. And Yoruba elders give Buhari shopping list. That details of that on page 10. My vision for 9th Senate by Lawan, that's also captured in page 42. And power sector shortfall exceeds 1.4 trillion naira. Nurses arrested for selling baby. Fans unhappy with Raw's tactic. And POS leads e-payment deals. Now, let's look at the Yoruba elders giving President Buhari their shopping list. How clear is this shopping list, considering, well, they say what they expect from President Buhari is for him to deliver on his mandate? Who determines the mandate? Who determines how fast we receive the dividend of democracy? Remember, the president once said, well, the system is slow, that's why it's slow. So do you think whether or not it's the Yoruba Elders Forum or it's whatever group, is still going to move at the pace that the president chooses to run at?
Well, they've been calling for federalism. I think that's one of the main issues they are pushing Buhari for. And
restructuring.
Federalism, restructuring, there's a lot of different definitions that people put to it. But then I think with what a lot of them are involved in Buhari's government, in the government, and they've delivered on votes to him. So I expect that it's not just about telling him, you know, being that a lot of them are, the vice president is there, Minister Fashola, they are all there. Even Tinubu, who the president personally thanked for his victory. You know, these are people who could, you know, work with him to achieve the dreams that they have through federalism, all the other things that they've always wanted. You know, it's time for them to get it. And they've worked hard for it. I think they've supported the president as much as any other part of the country.
Now, Dayo, when we're talking about true federalism, that's not far-fetched from devolution of powers, isn't it? And their call now, do you think the president's mannerism or disposition from the last 4 years will see any change in that towards this line they are calling for?
Except some things have changed that we are not aware of. I mean, but if it's this same government that before the election in 2014,
it says it's consolidated.
It was the top
this time around too.
I mean, so for 4 years, they hardly understood the definition of true federalism. They hardly understood the definition of devolution of power, of restructuring. So I'm not sure what has changed. So the Yoruba that they have a right to demand for what they want, and Nigerians are actually demanding for changes. But how soon we get those changes, if we ever get them at all, is a different story. Because if you look at the body language and the things that happened in the last 4 years, maybe we should just be patient. We should not expect too much.
Well, we would continue to look closely as to whatever the decisions the president decides to take. And lastly, we're going to be looking at Vanguard newspaper. The headlines here: tension in Kano as Ganduje wins, PDP rejects results, and MPC to retain policy rates as DMO floats 100 billion naira bond auction. Oyo governor-elect vows to review alleged 30 billion naira contract award within 2 weeks. No rift between Sanwo-Olu and Bode, and that's according to Sanwo-Olu's media aide. And my survival in helicopter crash, evidence of God's mercy. FG plots fresh charges against Onoge, and we also have I wish my husband's cabinet will have 41.6% women. And that's a call from Aisha Buhari, and EFCC declares Ayo Oke, former NIA boss, and his wife wanted. And we also have the chart here again showing the details of the margin of victory against the PDP as well as the APC from the governorship election results from the supplementary. Now, when we look at this now, Aisha Buhari saying once again the voice of reason comes to bear. You remember earlier on, she said, when the president said, well, my wife, whatever contribution she has belongs to the huddle room. And now, again, she's saying, well, she wishes that the president's cabinet will have a composition of no less than about 40%. Is this feasible? And is this call having any reason that the president should be looking into? In
terms of feasibility, I don't know. And these are things like I say, if you want to do something, she has access to the president. If she wanted this kind of thing for women, I would call for about 50%.
She's the wife of the president. She's the wife of the president. Necessarily enforce.
I know, but she has personal engagement with him almost every day. So if she wanted this kind of thing, there's a way she can lobby, advise, encourage, and even bring more reason to him than this public pronouncement. So sometimes I'm wary about these public pronouncements, but then I think it's something we should start doing in Nigeria. People, our government officials should reflect our population. If we have a population of about 50% women, 50% men, we should see it in the composition of our cabinet. If we have about, say, 40% youth, we should see that in our cabinet also. So I think it's right for her to want this, but it should be more of a private engagement with her, with the president, her husband, rather than public pronouncements in the media.
Dayo, some would say we have a rich stock of women, but yet the representation that was held during the debates prior to the election, the face who was supposed to represent women in Nigeria gave a poor performance. Even women came out hard on her. So do you think necessarily we have or we don't have the stock where we're supposed to make appointments from these women and have them deliver?
Also, I actually believe that we have women of great intelligence in Nigeria, women of capacity, women who can actually deliver. So our challenge in this country is never we have a dearth of women. We have the resources. I mean, go worldwide and see who are calling the shots. They're Nigerian men, they're Nigerian women. So the issue is that we don't have them. The issue is, and if, I mean, for the faces that we saw during the debates and all that, you don't necessarily need to be a politician before we bring you to come and serve your country. I mean, they are technocrats that can fit into some places and that can make serious change. The women that we have seen make changes in Nigeria in the
likes
past,
of Amina, Mohammed.
They were not necessarily first a politician. They were just technical, doing the thing they like to do. And so I think, do we have women? Yes, we do. And do we want to give women 40-something% that Aisha was asking for? That's another question. So I think, yes, if you look at the history we have in the past where some people belong to the kitchen and belong to the other room, and where she came out to say, oh, they have hijacked this man, nobody's talking, it's not accessible. So how accessible maybe something has changed, but well, let's hope this one has changed now. But I think the call is right. I think he's asking for 40%, and let's hope we don't get 40%. Maybe they give you 20% or they give 15%. But I think clearly the role of women in governance, the role of women in shaping the nation cannot be overemphasized. They should be given the opportunity.
Okay, now we also look at the federal government plot fresh charges against Onogan. There are indications that, well, these are just plots to ensure that it doesn't resume seats as the CJN. What do you think?
The first couple of charges, I think were they dropping or stopping those charges?
Like no case.
Exactly. So if they want to continue prosecution against him, they definitely have to bring something else up. From what we've seen so far, from the case they've brought forward, I don't see much that the Chief Justice has to answer for. So they may have something else. So it's important they bring it, or else they reinstate the man and stop this unnecessary harassment, unconstitutional suspension.
Okay, and now the MPC to retain policy rates as DMO floats 100 billion naira bond auction. Now we know for quite a while now MPR has stood at no less than 14%, and we've not seen any changes, because they say any changes could make the Nigerian economy a little bit unstable. What do you think? They say behind closed doors we were having a conversation and said, well, possibly they should have calls made to themselves.
It's been a long time I heard them, have this meeting and made a change to MPR. So maybe, perhaps there are other things they discussed that we don't know. But in terms of MPR, like I said, it's about time they just call each other and say, oh, it's the same thing, and let's go on with that. But well, they have their reasons. Emefiele has his reasons. The others, they have their reasons. The last
word now. No rift between Sanwo-Olu and Ambode. That's according to Sanwo-Olu's media aide. Quickly in a sum, what do you think?
Yeah, I think they're both party men. One incumbent governor, outgoing governor, and the other one incoming. So if they say there are no
bad blood despite the World Conference.
So I think that is politics. You have your issues, and once the issues are resolved, I think it's family affair for the APC in Lagos. And if they say there are no bad blood, yeah, let's take it that there are no bad blood.
Let's take it like that. I definitely would like to see Lagos move forward. Exactly. And as people say, well, thank you very much for speaking with us. We've been having a nice conversation with Dayo Lomuwagun. Thank you very much. And we've also had Nejeeb Bello. It's been a pleasure having your contribution.
Thank you.
Well, Off the Press at this moment continues with sports news with our sports correspondent as they come back now.